Hello and welcome to Perspectives, the weekly edition. I'm Sebastian Gomes. Forced migration is one of our greatest challenges today. Nearly 70 million people are currently on the move against their will because of ongoing conflicts, religious and ethnic persecution, and climate change, among other things. The crisis is as complex as it is disturbing, but the Church is responding. Pope Francis, together with Caritas Internationalis, have launched a global campaign called Share the Journey to raise awareness on forced migration and build solidarity with people who have fled their homes. Here in Canada, the campaign is being facilitated by Development and Peace, which is Caritas Canada. So today on the program, Development and Peace animator Luke Stocking is here to tell us about the campaign, explore the root causes of forced migration, and expose some of the myths surrounding the crisis. We'll also share a story of a family who has fled, a family that Canadian Catholics are helping through D&P partnerships in the Global South. But first, let's take a closer look at the Share the Journey campaign.
Every minute, 31 people are forced to flee their homes. Armed conflict, development mega projects, climate change, oil exploitation. It's time to step up. Join Development and Peace in the global campaign Share the Journey. Together, we can put an end to forced migration. In solidarity with the 68.5 million forcibly displaced children, women, and men around the world, we will walk 40,075 kilometers, the equivalent of the Earth's circumference. We need your help.
Joining me now in studio is no stranger to Salt and Light Television, Luke Stocking. You're the Central Ontario animator for Development and Peace, and you've been here to talk about the campaigns over the years. This is a really interesting one because it's unique, it's global. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it's precisely because this campaign is unique and global that I'm more excited than ever to be sharing the news about the Share the Journey campaign. It is, especially because of the topic that we're looking at, right? Forced migration. It's a global issue, so it makes sense for us to be working on that issue as part of a global campaign. And there are over 160 local Caritas organizations in the network of Caritas Internationalis that are so far participating in this. It began in 2017. Launched by Pope Francis, so we're coming a little bit late to the game. The campaign ends in 2019, but you know we're going to finish strong. That's the idea. So.
Yeah, it's really extraordinarily significant that, as you said, so many different people around the world are participating in one initiative together. It tells you a lot about the Catholic network around the world. There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of misinformation about migration and about refugees in the world today. And one of the things that I learned just looking at the materials is the difference between forced migration and refugees. Tell me about that. That's a really interesting fact.
For sure. It's even a term that I've had to get used to as we've gotten into this campaign, forced migration, because you're exactly right. Everybody automatically thinks we're talking about refugees. Now, when we say there are 68.5 million people who have been forced to flee their homes or are forced migrants, actually, out of that number, only 25 some odd million of that number are refugees. In fact, the vast majority are what we call IDPs, and most people aren't familiar with the term. It stands for internally displaced person. And the simplest way that I explain it to people is that, you know, if there was to be a war in Canada and I knew my city, my home, Toronto, was going to be bombed and I had to leave, I'd be forced to flee my home for my safety, I likely wouldn't be going to the US or some other country. I'd be finding the next safe place in Canada for me to be. Right. And so that's the case. Over 40 million of that number are internally displaced persons. And then you add in the third category of people who are asylum seekers, people who have not yet received their refugee status and are seeking asylum in a safe country, a safe second country. So.
And we tend to think, I mean, especially because of our proximity to the United States, that most of the refugees, at least that we see coming to the north, are coming from Central and Latin America, but that's not true either, right? Because I think 2/3 of all displaced people, forcibly displaced people in the world are actually from 5 countries.
Only 5 countries.
And none of them are in Latin America.
None of them are from Latin America.
Very interesting.
Yeah, you look at, of course, the Middle East. Syria, Afghanistan are 2 major sources. 6 million from Syria alone. And then, of course, the more recent and most recent phenomenon in Asia with the Rohingya crisis that's happening there, over 1 million fleeing Burma and into primarily neighboring Bangladesh. So yeah, you're exactly right. And it's just our experience here in Canada that leads people to think, and what we see in the news, to think that it would be Latin America or Central America, but that's not at all the case.
What about the causes of this crisis? There are many. It's obviously very complex, as I mentioned in the intro. When you look at the different causes, what do you point to? What do you see as maybe the most significant thing that's happening?
Well, again, as you said, it's complex, it's interwoven, so it's hard to pick out one as the most complex, but I think, or the most pertinent. But for me, when we look at the trajectory of the issue, I think for me what really stands out is the issue of climate change. You know, we have really dire reports coming out of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, you know, saying we've got 10 to 12 years to really get our act together as a planet. Otherwise, what we're seeing now, 68.5 million people, is going to be nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And so I really feel like that's a cause that we really need to be focused on, especially because it's interwoven. So that kind of pressure, environmental causes, puts pressure on those societies, which it can also leave those societies vulnerable to other causes of forced migration, such as war, economic, political upheaval, and persecution, as you know, certain groups become scapegoated for what's going on in the society.
And some of the poorest and most unstable countries are the ones that are most impacted by the effects of climate change, right?
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
this compound impact that drives people away. And I think one of the statistics that I read a little while ago that's always jarring to me is something like 25% of the world's population lives along a coast. Yeah. So if the waters start to rise, like you said, 68 million is going to sound like nothing.
Like nothing.
We have a clip of Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who's the Archbishop of Manila in the Philippines and the president of Caritas Internationalis.
Great friend.
Yeah, wonderful friend of ours at Salt and Light, and obviously of you all at Development and Peace now as well. We were fortunate enough to run into him at Rome a short while ago, and he gave us this little introduction to the Share the Journey campaign. Have a look.
My dear friends of Salt and Light in Canada, this is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Archbishop of Manila in the Philippines, and currently the president of Caritas Internationalis. A few months ago, actually a year ago, the Caritas Confederation launched a campaign called Share the Journey. And we were blessed with the presence of Pope Francis. He himself launched it at St. Peter's Square. What is this campaign all about? It is something very simple and close to the heart of Pope Francis. It is promoting the culture of personal encounter, especially with the forced migrants and the refugees of our time. Personal encounter. We are persons. We are not individuals. And a person is someone who seeks relationships, whereas an individual finds one's identity by isolating oneself. And in our time, some of the most isolated people are the forced migrants and the refugees. But they are persons, and we are persons. We are related to one another. If only we could encounter them person to person and walk with them. Let us shake their hands. Let us look at their eyes. Look into their eyes. Let us welcome them to a meal. Let them tell their stories. And if we allow them to enter our hearts, we will see ourselves. We will recognize our own stories in their stories. We will see our tears in their own tears. And then they're not strangers anymore. They are brothers, sisters, neighbors. They are me, present in another. This is the whole point of the campaign. To put a human face to a phenomenon. We always talk about migration. Please, this is not a concept. This is about human beings. Let us talk about migrants and let us share their journey. But it comes with solidarity and communion. So please, go. Meet a migrant. Listen to their stories, and you will discover yourself, and you will form a community, and you will walk together. You share the journey. Thank you.
That was Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, Archbishop of Manila and the President of Caritas Internationalis, speaking about the Share the Journey campaign. Luke, your reaction to what the Cardinal had to say there?
Well, I think it's, what strikes me really is that call that, that to not think of this as an abstract concept, forced migration, but his humanity always comes through, Cardinal Tagle, right?
That's true.
And he's always appealing to us to embrace our humanity, and so that really stands out for me. Often when we look at these issues, you know, statistical numbers, everything, we can kind of treat as an abstract, but it really strikes me the way he's calling us, you know, that this is not simply an abstract issue. Mm-hmm. This is a real human issue, encountering our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, put a face on the crisis. Is something he said in there something very important. I'll quote him. This campaign is about something simple and close to the heart of Pope Francis. It is promoting the culture of personal encounter. We do hear that a lot from Pope Francis. Mm-hmm. It's not only Cardinal Tagle who's emphasizing that, but we get it from Pope Francis. So what have you learned about this culture of encounter when it comes to an issue like migration? How does it apply?
I think culture of encounter, what's really stood out for me recently in reflecting on it is, you know, we say all the time, we're brothers and sisters, right? Since we're all children of God, all 7 billion of us, you know, I have 7 billion brothers and sisters, you have 7 billion brothers and sisters, right? And it becomes cliche. But as we look deeply into what Pope Francis is saying about the culture of encounter, it's the means, it's the way by which we can truly embrace our belief, our statement that we are all brothers and sisters, because that's how we become brothers and sisters. We can state it, we can say it, but in order to become it, truly become brothers and sisters, we have to have that culture of encounter. Some cultures of encounter, you know, are more easily facilitated than others, right? Like your family, you don't have a choice. You're going to have a culture of encounter within your family. But when it comes to those who are the most marginalized and often most vulnerable, migrants, it takes listening to that voice and that call to create that culture of encounter everywhere globally in the world. And so that's really struck me a lot, kind of reflecting on this notion of what it means to be brothers and sisters, truly with those who are forced to flee their homes as well too.
And certainly the Share the Journey campaign is an attempt to facilitate this encounter. So when Canadian Catholics actually participate in this Share the Journey campaign, what are they doing? How is that culture of encounter facilitated through that?
So number one, for a lot of, we hope that we will reach a lot of people out there, Catholics, and then by extension the wider public, who haven't thought about these things, especially on the topic of forced migration. One of the main things we want to address here is people's fear. So we have a big educational piece. You know, we were talking about those myths. That's crucial for Canadians to be educated in order to reduce fear, in order to have people more ready to encounter.
Like, for example, that Canada doesn't actually receive that many refugees. We often tout ourselves as being a country that's very open to welcoming, but the numbers don't actually suggest that, right? I mean, we're not welcoming that many.
No, yeah. I think according to the latest statistics that we have, it was about 58,000 of the more than 3.4 million new refugees in 2016 that Canada took in, so something like 1.7% or something. Right? So, but we have this, you know, this notion that somehow we're being invaded by these poor countries, and it's just not true. In fact, you know, 85% of refugees find their refuge in some of the poorest countries of the world, which is something that has been important to us. We've saying, you know, part of supporting refugees is also to support those countries, their next door neighbors who are taking in the flood of them. Like in Lebanon, for example, 1 in 4 people living in Lebanon is a Syrian refugee. I mean, could you imagine if all of a sudden 25% of the Canadian population was from a war-torn country, right?
Yeah. So let's get back into the campaign just briefly here. What are we doing? What are we going to do when we participate in this campaign at a parish level or at your school across Canada?
For sure. So there's basically 3 simple actions. First action is walk. So we are attempting to walk 40,075 kilometers, the circumference of the earth, in solidarity with our brothers and sisters. We want to invite as many people as possible in the pews and beyond, migrants as well, people who work with migrants as well too. It's a real opportunity for those communities, those organizations as well too, to come together that work already with refugees and to build bridges as well, and to build awareness for the work they are doing here locally. So we're having walks. That walk also, our walk, so we're trying to walk 40,075 kilometers. Just recently on October 22nd, the global pilgrimage portion of the Share the Journey campaign, global campaign, was launched. So globally, we were trying to walk 1 million kilometers. So, you know, 40,000, that's not too many. I think we should be able to handle that in Canada. Right. And we've got a lot of land to walk along,
and
right?
Some beautiful trails.
We've got a lot of beautiful trails, exactly.
That's right.
So that's the first thing, walk. The second thing is, of course, signing our postcard.
Yes.
Every year, you know, we got the famous DMP postcard. And so we are asking Canadians to sign this simple postcard and send a message to the Canadian government that we need to do more to address the root causes of forced migration. And that's like a unique thing that we are bringing to this campaign as well too. We are saying that through that culture of encounter, that we also become educated about the causes of why our brothers or sisters are being forced to flee their homes. And the tagline for our version of the campaign is, no one should be forced to flee their home, which is why it's so important to look at those root causes. And the postcard asks the government to do more to address those root causes of forced migration as well too. Which of course means working towards a more generous Canada in terms of our internet. And this is a continuation from something we were looking at last year, where we're nowhere near the level of generosity that we need to be as Canadians when it comes to reaching out and addressing these root causes.
Right. You mentioned just a little bit earlier that Development and Peace is supporting not only forcibly displaced people, but also the countries that are welcoming most of these people, you know, and we wanted to put a human face on this. So we have a clip here that Development and Peace actually put together, a story of the Hossein family, who is a Rohingya Muslim family from Myanmar, Burma, that were displaced and are now living in a refugee camp in Bangladesh. So let's take a look at their story.
How would you feel if you had to flee your home today?
The children were really scared. They didn't want to come out of the house. They asked us, "Mother, where will you find us if the Burmese army kill us?"
Persecuted in Burma, nearly 1 million Rohingya have taken refuge in Bangladesh. Among them is the Hossein family. Here is their journey.
Our daughter was 5 years old. She didn't understand much. Then when she saw that many people started to escape and we had to go somewhere else, she understood it all. We escaped from our home when the army started deliberately shooting at people.
We stayed on roads for 3 nights after escaping. We had almost no food when we left. We had some snacks, which we fed to our children.
I carried my daughter on my chest since she was sick and she couldn't walk. The number of corpses we walked over while coming here is countless. We still feel like crying whenever these thoughts cross our minds.
I had my own house. The houses were big. We would farm, cultivate betel leaf, and plow. We made a good living, and we would have spare cash in hand after everything. Now, we have run out of money. Our country is divided. We don't have any more money.
In a few short months, Kutupalong Camp has become the largest refugee camp in the world. It extends as far as the eye can see and is home to 626,000 refugees, 60% of whom are children. With support from the Canadian government, Development and Peace and its partner Caritas Bangladesh are providing support to 100,000 vulnerable people, including the Hossein family.
Caritas gave us a large package when we first arrived here. Caritas gave us an umbrella, a gas stove, sandals, and clothes as well.
We've been given almost everything we need. They gave us soap and latrines for the small children. We were given water jugs, a vessel, a bowl, everything. This gas stove has turned out to be very useful because when we had to go to the forest to collect wood for fuel, we were killed, slaughtered, and then taken away. What if my 4 children were killed because I asked them to go collect wood in the forest? We were really happy after getting this. For 1 month, we could cook in peace. But now it's been almost 6 weeks and the gas supply has run out.
We are indebted to them for their help. We didn't expect this much.
We received trees, bamboo, and other materials for building houses from Caritas. Before, our house used to sway when there were strong winds, but now it's more solid. We're really happy and thankful to Allah for everything. We hope they will keep helping us in the future.
If Bangladesh and Myanmar settle the issue of our return through meetings and discussions, then we will go back. But we don't want to go back until we get justice for the torture we had to go through.
Share the journey with Rihanna, her family, and the 68.5 million children, women, and men who have been forced to flee their homes.
So one of my earnest requests for you would be to please share the journey for the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. Pray for them.
Very powerful story there of the Hossein family, and amazing work that Development of Peace is doing to support people like them. We were talking a little bit earlier about this walk that Canadian Catholics are encouraged to walk, to be in solidarity with these forcibly displaced people. If someone does want to walk, there's a website that you can go to that you can actually record.
That's right.
The number of kilometers, so that's how we're going to add all these together. Just tell me a little bit about how that works technically.
Yeah, sure. So you're going to want to go to our address, right, devp.org/walk, so it's really easy to remember. And when you get there, you're going to have the chance, you will be invited to register. So you basically set up a page where you then become a participant in the walk. Now, we say, well, where am I supposed to walk, or what am I, right? So the good thing is there's lots of options. So so beginning with, I mean, it's not exactly in the spirit of the campaign, but you can walk by yourself even. I don't recommend that, but it is possible. But no, we do have actually a lot of people who, they hike regularly, and so they want to dedicate that to the concept of share the journey, so they can record their kilometers very simply that way. There's a lot of parishes, schools that are organizing walks locally. So what somebody wants to do is get in touch with their local DMP person, their local animator or local diocesan council, and they can do it through the website and find out where's a walk happening near them. So for example, for us in the Archdiocese of Toronto, we're looking at the 5th Sunday in Lent, organizing a big walk. We know there's lots of schools that are organizing walks as well too, so there's all kinds. So the thing is get connected, or if you're a real go-getter, organize one yourself. We want as many people to organize walks as possible, and the website just walks you right through. So you go, you set up, and then once you've walked your kilometers, you simply say, this is how many kilometers I walked, and we total them up. And we're only at 996 right now, so we're a 40th of the way there. We got a long way to go.
We're filming this in November of 2018, sorry, but the campaign actually runs all the way till August 2019. Yeah, so lots of time, obviously, to organize some kind of walk. Which is why it's great to be here to tell everybody. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I wanted to ask you something. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a non-believer, and I was explaining this campaign to her, and she said, "Why are you walking? Like, what does walking accomplish?" And so I think if this campaign is to try to reach people beyond the church who would typically, the people in the pews who would typically participate in something like this, what do we say? What do we say to those people who are curious about our vision of solidarity in that sense, exercising it in that way? Yeah. There's a lot of interesting ways people are doing walks that even highlights how the notion of a walk connects to the issue of forced migration, because obviously
people who are forced to leave their homes often are leaving on foot with next to nothing, right? And some people are organizing walks. So for example, organizing a walk where everybody's going to bring a backpack and then fill the backpack with goods that then can be donated to a local shelter that's working with refugees, for example, but as a way of also symbolizing that people are forced to flee with nothing but what they're carrying on their backs. So it's a way to, and then it's also a way, the walks, in terms of who's walking. So we want to be reaching out to connect with people who are forced migrants themselves. And it's been amazing, actually, even just a few walks that I've already been a part of, the stories that come out and what people share. And so the walks also become a chance for that encounter to happen, you know? I mean, it's where, and we say that as people of faith, right? We say you know, like the road to Emmaus, we meet Jesus on the road, right? So, and often some of my best conversations with people are, you know, when I'm walking somewhere. So, so I think it's a way to call, and it's a public witness. That's the other thing. Like, we're not just walking up and down the church, you know, pews, right? Like, we're getting out there. And so the idea is, like, people see you walking and what's going on here. So it's also a way to kind of, again, that will create that interest and then that conversation. And it's compounded again all the more because of the global nature of this, that there's literally millions of people doing this all around the world. Luke, we have to leave it there, but thanks very much for coming in. It was a great pleasure. Thanks for having me. Luke Stocking's the Central Ontario animator for Development and Peace, Caritas Canada. You can find out everything you want to know about the Share the Journey campaign by going to their website. It's devp.org. The page that Luke was talking about, where you can sign up to walk, is devp.org/walk. You can also find them on Twitter and Facebook at DevPeace. That's all the time we have, but thanks very much for joining us. Please, please, please share the journey with all of the forcibly displaced people around the world. Show your solidarity and express your faith, witness to your faith through this wonderful campaign of development and peace. That's all for today. Thanks very much. We'll see you again soon.